I often wonder about the nature of reality, about our relationship to the creative force that forged the particles of our stars and intertwined them with the molecules of our bodies. Who are we? And where are we actually sitting within the architecture of our universe? Are we alone? Or is the answer simply stranger than we can think? My name is Jeremy Corbell. I seek to weaponize your curiosity, and if you're ready to suspend your own prejudice, welcome to the world of extraordinary beliefs.
Explosive stuff is coming out. I mean, something's going on right now. Can you talk about that?
If everything goes as planned, I think we are on the eve of something momentous that will change on a tectonic level, the UFO subject. It's going to be really big. I think it changes the tone of how other media would treat the UFO topic from here on out. I hope so anyway. And it's going to reveal some things that have been going on for a long time.
Government involvement in studying the phenomenon itself.
Yeah, it's beyond just lights in the sky or radar returns. They've been investigating and looking into associated phenomena, things that occur in proximity with what we call UFOs, things that you would think the government would find too far out.
Will any of the fingers be pointing toward Skinwalker Ranch?
Hopefully this opens it up. It changes everything.
Declassified videos and authentic Department of Defense footage published by the New York Times in December.
The program received more than $20 million for its work.
For nearly the last decade, I ran a sensitive aerospace threat identification program.
People, I think, have conflated the concept of a UFO with whether we're visited by aliens.
The program produced documents that describe sightings of aircraft with no visible signs of propulsion.
We're talking about unidentified flying objects, UFOs.
We have something here. We don't know what it is. We sure don't know how it works. And by the way, there's nothing we can do about it.
Nobody gives a about aliens there.
Yeah.
They're looking for things that might possibly be...
This is a potential threat, a grave one to our country. What is DoD doing about it?
The so-called Tic Tac UFO was detected over several days in 2004 by personnel with the USS Nimitz battle group off the coast of San Diego. It didn't attack, but it demonstrated vast superiority over America's most advanced defense systems.
These observations match with previous observations going well before that. You have something coming into our airspace. When it continues to happen as a pattern, we now become increasingly concerned because it's not an anomaly, now it's a trend.
This video was recorded off the coast of Florida in 2015.
That is in our airspace and shouldn't be here. You, DoD, you, CIA, you, DHS, have the responsibility of protecting us. How did this happen? And yet it's crickets. Nobody wants to have the conversation. My job in the government at the time was twofold: to determine what it was and how it worked. I figured if we can answer at least those two first things, everything else we'll be able to explain later.
The technology of these craft is beyond anything known on Earth.
This is the story of a place. It's been shrouded in secrecy for more than 20 years. There have been whispers, but most likely, you've never seen or heard the real events. I guarantee you that was the plan all along. That's exactly what they wanted. Imagine a place between shadow and substance. A place where the world is thin. To most, a location that invokes the darkest and most hidden corners of terror. Something prowls here, something lurks. And if you hunt it, it's gonna hunt you back. It's elusive, manipulative, and violent. It's haunting more than haunted. We don't really understand it. Even after the largest scale scientific study in history of a paranormal hotspot, there are more questions than answers. However, we do have some answers, and that's what this story is about. This is a hunt for answers to unformed questions, a hunt for the unknown. And the answers have been hiding at a ranch at the center of it all. I was like you, until I wasn't.
When you try to study something like the Skinwalker Ranch, you got to cast a really wide net, because ultimately this mystery, we don't know what the hell it is.
You know there's more to a story, and you're not allowed to talk about it. That's a human burden.
Yeah, I mean, it was frustrating in the beginning, because Colum and Bob Bigelow would tell me these stories about what was going on the property, and I couldn't tell anyone. I couldn't write about it, and it drove me crazy, and I kept pestering them, and eventually they thought, what the heck, we'll give it a try. Maybe we'll find out if there are other places like it. The publicity will do us some good. Maybe some other witnesses will come forward. So they allowed me to write those newspaper articles, and we got a heck of a lot of attention.
There's a lot to uncover in all of this, huh?
Oh my God. There's some of this stuff I haven't seen in a long time.
It's overwhelming.
This is stuff, material that's specific to the ranch. I've saved every scrap of paper ever since Dr. Colum Kelleher and Bob Bigelow sort of brought me into the loop about what was going on there. I'd been hearing about it for a couple of years, but wasn't allowed to say anything. And then eventually I talked Bob and Bigelow into giving me the permission to go to the ranch, and Colum Kelleher gave me a tour a couple of times. And people forget, you know, they're familiar with the book, but they forget that my interest in it started as a documentary.
One of your first book reviews?
Yeah. Like a mustachioed and debonair Fox Mulder, George Knapp wants to believe. So do I, actually. We got that reaction a lot. You guys didn't convince me. Convince you of what? We weren't trying to convince anyone. We're trying to tell the story and asking people, hey, help us figure this out. Because we don't know what the explanation is.
Is there more to tell now?
There's a lot more to tell. There's so many things that have happened on the property since the book came out that have not been made public. There's all kinds of people, hundreds of people have visited the property, and it's like a Rorschach test. They go there thinking they're going to see skinwalkers or Bigfoot, and sure enough they do. So you take those accounts with a grain of salt. Other times people have had some pretty dramatic encounters that they keep to themselves, and some accounts have happened to people who are very credible, who had very dramatic encounters, and their stories have not been told for reasons that I cannot explain right now, but those are the spookiest of all, because the consequences go beyond the property.
You could explain. You won't explain.
I can't. I can't at this point. It leads to a much bigger place and a much bigger understanding of what we're dealing with out there. It's not simply a haunted ranch. It's not activity that stays confined
to this particular piece of property. It moves. It travels.
And there were actually vents.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I don't remember if we talked about it in the book, but the family, the Gorman family, had experiences that followed them. After they left the property, it followed them for a while. They're not the only ones that's happened to. Since the book came out, there have been other people who've been on the property. They've seen stuff on the property. They've had encounters where they were basically told, stop, you're not welcome here. And then it followed them. And that's all I can say about it. It's hard to find anybody in the Uinta Basin who doesn't have some kind of an experience with a UFO or Bigfoot or some other strange phenomena or somebody in their family. So we recorded a lot of that stuff on multiple trips. That footage was recorded on different kinds of formats. We collected information and tapes from some of the witnesses who had made their own recordings, and all of that material was saved with the idea of producing a documentary or a series of documentaries, and then we were asked to not proceed. So I basically canned it, put it all in a box, and most of the footage has never seen the light of day.
It's a mountain of tapes. What's on these tapes?
These are interviews. We had tours of the property several times. Robert Bigelow comments about the ranch, cattle mutilations, interviews with neighbors who had lost cattle. Trying to get Mr. Bigelow to go on camera to talk about it was difficult. At the time I finally got him to sit down and open up about it. It was the first interview he'd ever done on the subject. Even though I had known him for 20 years, it was really tough to get him to sit down and talk about it.
So most of this video footage in this box, the world has never seen.
Yeah, this is 30 or 40 hours of material that the public has never seen before.
This topic is deep. It requires serious investigation. It requires people to look at the evidence. My curiosity became so overwhelming that I could no longer be a passive observer, but I had to become an active participant. The original story, never seen by the public, can now be told, and it's weaved into a tapestry of new, ongoing phenomena and events. This is a moment in time that can't be replicated. This will never happen again. The access to the ranch during the investigations, that will never happen again. The time is right, and the time is definitely now. Notoriety of Skinwalker Ranch exploded in 2005 with the publication of the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, which was written by George Knapp and Colin Kelleher. That book exploded this area onto the map. George's documentation was exclusive. It was happening while investigators were on the ranch. I mean, look, there are no images from Skinwalker Ranch. There's no video, there's no footage during these investigations. The only footage of this is in these archive boxes of George Knapp's. It was like Raiders of the Lost Ark Man, documents and paperwork and footage. It's everything that George Knapp has accumulated over 20-something years as the only journalist ever allowed to be on the ranch and to document and film. So it's this incredible opportunity. The footage was held back, it was embargoed, it was shut off. So to be able to pull tapes from that archive of those boxes, it's really rare footage. It's incredible that we're at the point where it can be shown to the public. Skinwalker Ranch, this is like the Area 51 of the paranormal. If any of this is true, this is game-changing. Going public now.
This is officially the second homestead.
Down here, yeah, it's the middle homestead.
This is where some pretty hairy stuff has happened.
Just in here, yeah.
In the middle of the night, in what looks like the middle of nowhere, we slice into inky darkness in the company of investigators who've taken a bouncy ride down this same rutted road hundreds of times. They remember every barbed wire gate, every curve and dip,
And they remember all too well the location of every bizarre encounter they've documented since 1996. The dirt trail is the only path through the property, seemingly the only way anyone or anything can get in or out, though there may be other, less obvious points of entry. On moonless nights, the darkness hangs like a heavy blanket, smothering beams of artificial light. Beyond 20 feet, it's blackness. We stop in what's called the Middle Homestead, where the gangly branches of towering cottonwoods engulf stark, weather-beaten structures, rustic homes that have been empty for 50 years or more. Seriously, it's like the backdrop for a slasher movie, except this wasn't created by a set designer. This is the throbbing heart of Skinwalker Ranch. What is it about this place? Not merely the ranch, but the entire Uinta Basin.
It is a Grand Central Station, a place where everything from cattle mutilations to Bigfoot to UFOs, flying objects, and they all seem to be congregated on a 480-acre ranch in northeastern Utah.
A lot of people, we understand, have seen these things over the years in this area. Is that fair?
Hundreds of people, in my opinion. I had some girlfriends that I kind of ran around with back in 77, 78, and they told me experiences that they'd have out by Bottle Hollow, you know, lights that are forms that would be above them when they were scared.
At the ranch, as you well know, it was not a single phenomena. It was not go out and watch a UFO, go out and watch the lights, like the Marfa lights or something. There were a host of things that happened. When and where were quite unpredictable, except that they happened within a relatively small geographic area.
The UFO manifestation activity here ranges all over in this country. The basin is I don't know what the square mileage is, but it's huge in northeastern Utah, and to the Uinta Mountains to the north of us, the same type of paranormal activity is demonstrated, many case histories up there as well.
For as long as humans have lived in this part of northeastern Utah, they've reported strange things in the sky, in and around their homes, and sometimes inside their heads. A Byzantine smattering of unusual phenomena, a paranormal stew. It's as if some other reality occasionally bleeds into our world, giving us glimpses of the universe next door. On our first visit to the ranch, we tried to get the attention of whatever it is that lives here. Sometimes merely the arrival of outsiders is enough, so we hiked around, made noise, disturbed the earth. And at night, we built a fire out in the Middle Homestead, which has been a focal point of dramatic and unexplained events. We did everything short of painting a bullseye on our foreheads, and then we waited. On the other side of the fire, a man who spent 27 years as a law enforcement officer in the Uinta Basin. He asked that we not use his real name, so we'll call him Preston.
There was one of the local newspapers did I guess you'd call like a poll in this area. Asked several people the question, do you believe that there are in UFOs, and do you believe that the Uinta Basin is a hot spot for it? And I think that it was like 4 out of 5. The answer was yes. And then the majority of them said that they was undecided. I don't know of one individual that absolutely said, no, I do not believe them, that they even exist. And I'm referring to long-time residents of the basin that was born and raised here in the basin.
Preston remembers when the waves of reports started pouring in to local police.
I believe it was 1971 when I first started in law enforcement. There was several reports of UFO sightings that was put out to like law enforcement officers in the field. As I recall, there was 3 to 4 of those reports that I received where I actually witnessed what I believed to be an unidentified flying object.
His wife also had multiple sightings, one that coincided with a mutilated cow on Preston's property, and another in 1995 directly over Skinwalker Ranch. Preston interviewed his own wife in 1998 and wrote this report for a private research group. The object his wife reported was shaped like a hexagon, aluminum colored with multiple lights.
What she described was 4 lights, like connected to a bar. They were just 4 large lights that appeared over the ridge, and I was some distance away from her when she seen it. She called it to my attention, but before I could get there, they had disappeared.
This is probably the most studied real estate in the history of the UFO phenomenon. There has never been, to our knowledge, a place that has had the same kind of focus in terms of study.
The Uinta Basin isn't the middle of nowhere. It's far removed from big cities, but that's how the locals like it. The landscape is stark and beautiful. The dirt and rocks rich in hydrocarbons and dinosaur bones. But something here seems to be a magnet for the unknown. It's been that way for a long time. In the Uinta Basin, unknown aerial objects became so commonplace in the 60s and 70s that locals became used to seeing them, and outside investigators were drawn to the area. One of them, Utah State University scientist Dr. Frank Salisbury, wrote a highly regarded book, The Utah UFO Display. After weeding out the 90% of sightings which were likely misidentifications of known objects, he focused on 400 or so well-documented cases involving unknown structured craft of many shapes and sizes. Salisbury obtained most of the case files from lifelong resident Joseph Jr. Hicks, a local science teacher who'd educated generations of Uinta residents. Hicks spent years driving the back roads of the basin to meet and interview eyewitnesses, many of them his former students.
And I says, can you see that? Look at that, that's amazing. And it was a round, gray, metallic looking thing.
In January 1999, oil company executive Gregory Todd was driving home from work, talking on the phone to a coworker headed in the opposite direction toward the town of Vernal. Todd noticed an object that looked like this, roundish, gray, metallic, with no wings or tail, traveling at a high rate of speed toward the ground.
And I says, this is amazing. And it came down and went behind some clouds that were just kind of on the horizon. And I said, that had to be humongous. And I thought, okay, explosion, something, and I never did, there was nothing.
The next day at work, he spoke to a group of friends.
And I said, okay, guys, I'm gonna ask you something. Did you guys see something weird last night? And they just happened to be coming down the Bluebell Road facing south. And they said, yeah, we saw this round thing. And it wasn't any big deal to them. It's like, yeah, we just saw this round thing in the sky. And I thought, well, what? Think about it, and then I said, okay, that thing is big. That was big. Whatever it was big. Because Bluebell's 20 miles away. I was 5 miles away from Roosevelt, and 3 different groups saw it.
Few places in the world have had so many sightings over such a long period of time, not just decades, but centuries. The earliest report is from the journal of Father Escalante, the Spanish missionary who in 1776 led the first European party across the basin. But Uinta is much more than a UFO hotspot. The objects seen in the skies are benign distractions compared to the bizarre events on the ground, in particular on this strip of green pasture that's said to be in the path of the Skinwalker.
They believe that they're, like you talk about, the Skinwalker is extraterrestrial. This is something that's in their culture. It has been for forever.
But this story is bigger than just the ranch. This story is an ever-pervasive river, churning and leaching seemingly paranormal ooze throughout the surrounding area. It creeps to the edges. If there's an unofficial UFO capital in Utah, it's the northeastern corner. Quietly and secretly, there's been a current that runs through this area. Throw a rock in any direction in a small town of the Uinta Basin, and you're likely to hit someone who's seen an anomalous aerial object. The basin is a UFO hotbed, The locals are reluctant to talk about it with outsiders, but the number of sightings easily ranges in the thousands. The unofficial consensus is that more than half of the people who live in the basin have seen them, over the mountains, above the towns, on roadways and oil fields, anomalous lights, maneuvering orbs, and metallic craft. Objects, things which are not easily explained. Why so many, and why here? Roosevelt, Ballard, Fort Duchesne, Uinta County. For some, the phenomenon provides a mecca for curiosity, but for those that experience it, it's corrosive, like an acid, and it's been here a long time. Stories of UFOs, poltergeist-like occurrences, and creatures of all kinds have pocked the landscape and residents throughout generations. Normal people, hardworking people, they're having extraordinary encounters of every shape and shadow. It's just part of life out here.
We purchased the property as a living laboratory. It's been a phenomenal laboratory. I feel humbled. We did get a good education, and I think we still are.
The NIDS guys used dogs as biosensors. The dogs would be able to sense that something was near and give them advanced warning. They were uncannily accurate.
We've close to 100 different incidents. We train like hell to deal with animal mutilations, with lights in the sky, animals being moved into different locations. No two incidents ever repeated themselves. Training is meaningless when nothing is repeated. And that has happened consistently. It's the only thing consistent.
This is a lot more than a UFO story, as you learn.
Consciousness plays a significant role in this topic. It's something that's completely outside of our normal physics and understanding. This is something that is beyond our normal means of calibrating. It became obvious that we were along for the ride. We weren't the ones in control.
Did you have an experience on the ranch?
My first visit there, it had been a down period. Colin Kelleher had told me, look, the activity has sort of gone underground. That's why I was allowed to go, because maybe they figured I could, my own inherent weirdness quotient, I could stir something up, or I could at least tell the world a little bit about the story so that we could find out if there are other places like that. So I went to the property, and there's a couple of things that would happen that would stimulate activity historically. They said, arrival of a stranger, that was me. If you make a bunch of noise, in particular, digging up the earth. So we did all that. I made a bunch of noise. We built a fire out there. We danced around it, and then we got an earth mover and dug a bunch of holes. So if there was something to be disturbed, we did our best to disturb it. And then they took me and put me on a chair in the middle homestead where some really bad stuff had happened, and they left me there. It was a pitch black, middle of the night, middle of nowhere, and a place that where the monster, the predator type monster had appeared, where a giant dark cloud had invaded a physicist's mind, where several cattle had been mutilated, where a ball of light to a dimensional wormhole had appeared. I'm right there. And they said, see ya. And they went a couple hundred yards away and put a camera on me to see if something came and got me. And I'd like to tell people that I was I'm brave, I'm not afraid of this stuff, but I was on edge, waiting to see what would happen. I'm thinking to myself, look, okay, I'm fine with flying saucers coming here. I'd like to see a ball of light, an orb, something like that. That'd be really great. But I don't really want to come face to face with predator monster. The only thing that came to get me were mosquitoes. So I have had no anomalous experience on the ranch myself. But I've interviewed all the people, all the key players, every single one of them, the people who had been there for years. The only people I haven't interviewed is the Gorman family themselves, the Shermans. But I have all these transcribed interviews that NIDS folks had done, and all the material they collected during the height of the study. So I feel like I know them. And I've talked to the neighbors, I've talked to people in town. This stuff is real. It's been going on a long time. And everybody who lives there knows about it.
So George Knapp, investigative reporter and bait for Skinwalker Ranch.
I was bait. It's a good story to tell now. It wasn't pleasant at the time. It wasn't.
To indigenous locals, this stretch of red sandstone is special because it is, quote, in the path of the Skinwalker, according to members of the Ute tribe. The first time we heard that phrase, the reaction was, what's a Skinwalker? It's a touchy subject for many tribes, including the Utes, whose sprawling nation covers 1.3 million acres in this country. The Utes were ordered to move here around the end of the Civil War. The U.S. Army built and staffed a fort to keep an eye on them. Today, the Utes coexist with their neighbors while retaining their own government, police force, businesses, and culture.
This is something that's in their culture. It has been for forever.
Preston worked as a tribal police officer for several years, but says few of his Ute friends are willing to talk about skinwalkers.
Well, you could compare it to the nymph that you hear of werewolves, like an individual that turns into an animal-type being. Most of them are very reluctant to talk about it.
In tribal lore, a skinwalker is an evil presence, a sorcerer and shapeshifter who steals lives and souls. Even mentioning the word is considered risky, and this ridge, said to be in the path of the Skinwalker, is a borderline of sorts. It overlooks an island of private ranch property surrounded by tribal lands. The tribe doesn't prohibit members from visiting the ranches, but strongly warns against it, in part because strange things seem to be concentrated here. Skinwalker is sort of a blanket explanation for a range of inexplicable events.
There does seem to have been a change between the 70s and the 90s in the certainly of the effects of the phenomena on different people. Where in the 70s you didn't get the scary stuff, even in the Uinta Basin, and we're going mostly on the testimony of Junior Hicks and probably a couple of dozen other witnesses. Whereas in the 90s, most of the activity that we have is centered around this ranch, and that was all kind of very scary poltergeist kind of stuff that it seems to have changed in character, even though the same silver discs have been seen, Mexican hat type UFOs have been seen in the area, but overlaid on that you've got these multiple kind of poltergeist psychic type stuff.
Biochemist Dr. Colm Kelleher didn't expect to be sitting in a dark cow pasture talking about skinwalkers and poltergeists when he signed on with NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, founded in the mid-90s by Las Vegas billionaire Robert Bigelow. Bigelow's lifelong interest in UFO research led to NIDS and to the ownership of this 480-acre ranch. It's a somewhat twisted tale. The property had been vacant for 7 years when, in 1994, a family bought it. It was their dream to raise high-end Simmental cattle here. There's only one entrance, a gate that displayed an eerie sign. A single dirt road leads into the property, which is made up of 3 parcels. The first homestead on the east side is where the ranch house is located, along with a corral. A second middle homestead contains long abandoned buildings. The third homestead is ringed by tall trees and underbrush. A river flows on the south side of the ranch, and on the north, the Sandstone Ridge. The family of 4 had a startling encounter on their very first weekend there. From out of the brush on the south edge of the property, they saw a huge canine walking toward them.
And they had put a couple of calves in this corral here, in this one here, and they saw this wolf was just trotting across the field here from this direction, and it stopped occasionally. There was a light rain. It was a misty kind of a day with light rain, And so they were watching this wolf as it was coming towards them, and seemingly kind of unconcerned.
The family assumed the wolf must be someone's pet. It was huge, but seemed tame. One of the calves made the mistake of sticking its snout through the bars of the corral.
The wolf stuck his head into the corral, grabbed the muzzle of the calf, in full view of these, tried to drag it out of the corral. The calf, was going wild. So Terry and his dad went over with, stout sticks and started beating on the wolf to try to make sure that it let go the calf. Several times they beat on the wolf without any effect whatsoever. So Terry asked his son to go in to get a .357 Magnum. The son came out, and the wolf was still trying to drag the calf through the corral. And Terry sort of pointed the Magnum at the animal and shot it. Now, as far as I remember, he shot it either 3 or 4 times, and it was like from increasingly close range. First of all, it was from several feet, and then it was closer and closer. On the 4th shot, the animal, I believe, let the calf go, but the animal the wolf didn't let out any yelps of pain. There was no sign of blood. There was no sign of distress. The animal let the calf go and looked at Terry.
The rancher's son had run to the house to retrieve a hunting rifle. He handed it to his father.
Terry gets the .30-06, which can bring down an elk, from a relatively long distance. Shot it at a distance of 20 feet, and this time there was a big recoil from the animal. The animal kind of recoiled, but still didn't give out any pain or anything like that, but kind of backed off for maybe 10 feet, 15 feet, and Terry shot it it was actually a 6th time with the .30-06, and this time he saw a bunch of flesh, that the bullet exited from the animal with flesh, and this time the animal just kind of turned on its heel and just trotted off, almost casually, exactly where it had come from, across in that direction. Now, the piece of flesh was lying on the ground, and they examined it later.
The father and son, both armed with rifles, went after the wolf, catching glimpses as it moved through thickets and following the deep tracks it left in the wet ground.
Well, what they did was they tracked the animal all the way across to the creek. There's a creek about half a mile to 3/4 of a mile in that direction. They tracked the animal, they went after the animal, and they found that its tracks just stopped suddenly in a muddy bank right by the creek. It just seemed to, the tracks went nowhere. They were going to a specific area. They should not have vanished, but they vanished. But they came back then, and they found the piece of tissue from the animal that had been blown off by the .30-06, and to them it looked old. It looked almost like the beginnings of decay, decayed flesh. It blew them. This incident blew them away, because even a single shot from a .357 Magnum should have brought that wolf down. Now, should remember that this wolf initially was very friendly to them. It actually walked right up to the dad, and the dad patted it on its head. So we're not talking about some kind of mirage. We're not talking about some kind of hallucination. This was a physical animal. He patted him. He smelled like wet dog.
Think about it. How do you characterize that?
There really is no context even to put that in, because it was a physical animal that was that it looked like it was flesh and blood. They chalked it up as being totally bizarre. They talked about it for weeks afterwards, because this was really the first incident that they had encountered just after moving on the ranch. They, as I said, they were just moving into the general area. I think they were putting furniture into the house, and this animal was between 2 and 3 times the size of a normal wolf. Normal wolf would kind of come up to there. Well, this thing was huge.
Later, at the gate entrance, the rancher's wife had another encounter with the huge wolf as she entered the property. The wolf was in the company of 2 black dogs with oversized heads. Months later, when the family was asked to describe the wolf by looking at a lineup of different types, they pointed to this beast as the one closest to what they'd seen. It's a dire wolf and has been extinct for 10,000 years.
We live in the middle of some other kind of intelligence. The secrecy begins with them, whoever they are, these visitors, these entities that interject themselves into our lives. Who they are, why they're here, what their interest is in us long term. We don't know the answers. We can surmise, but we don't know the answers to any of the big stuff. But we can say, I can say with certainty that there is some kind of intelligence operating here, that it shows us glimpses of itself from time to time on its own agenda. But it is the architect of the secrecy.
I believe that there are aspects of consciousness that are associated with the UFO phenomena that we have not addressed fully.
The global public is not ready to have global confirmation of this. A lot of disturbing things will occur. It's just too powerful.
People have ignored these facts. They'd like it to go away. It's not going away. It's not going away because the phenomenon itself doesn't go away. It's been with humans, every continent, every culture throughout human history. It's here whether we like it or not, and it's here today.
According to tribal lore, some of the unusual events in and around the ranch are believed to be the handiwork of a shape-shifting entity known as a skinwalker. The Utes also believe that lights seen on the property could be the spirits of long-departed ancestors that enter this world from under the ground. But tribal members also see the same metallic UFOs witnessed elsewhere in the basin. These objects appear to be technological, not spiritual, and a few of the encounters occur right in front of their faces.
That morning, when I did my rounds, I usually go out the front door where I came, then go back all the way around the building. That's when this voice appeared in my head and said, hey, get back inside, you shouldn't be seeing this.
You shouldn't be out here, you shouldn't be seeing this.
Go back inside, you're gonna miss your family. The hull of the ship was like this. I don't know if you ever seen like the Star Trek Enterprise ship.
Okay.
You know how the round shape of that? It was like that, but like a black, dark gray.
And were you standing right here?
No, actually, I was standing right here, and we were looking out this door here. We didn't see the ship per se right there, but we saw the lights, and we're like, okay, you know what the hell's going on? So we walked out here, me and the female client, looking up here and then seeing this object, and we're like, what? Then we noticed that it started kind of moving back a little bit. I'd say we probably got about close to right here, just looking at it, and you can see it just like right there, like, and the cloud and everything and the light, and it was so intense, and just like going like this, like looking. And then I was talking to her, and I was pointing out, hey, that's a UFO, that's a fucking UFO. And I remember swearing at the time too, and we're standing there looking, and I was looking like this, and you know, something just going in through my head saying, hey, you shouldn't be out here, you shouldn't be seeing this. You know, and I was like, oh shoot, you know, and I was like, hey, let's go back inside. So we started going back in, and we're looking still. That's why I said I wish people could have been awake at the time during that Sunday morning to see what I saw. And I have people that seen it all the way up towards White Rocks, all the way down towards Four Corner, Randolette, that were up at that time. And those that were here, you know, had that feeling like everything was dead silent. It was just an eerie, quiet silence. No dogs were barking, no noise or anything like that. And people at the store during the time when the blackout, they opened the doors just to see, and they could see the colors.
Hey, get back inside, you shouldn't be seeing this. Go back inside, you're gonna miss your family.
I kind of stopped in my tracks, and I was like, well, you know, thinking in my head, oh, fuck this shit. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I'm
go
gonna
back
miss my
inside.
family. Fuck that.
I ain't gonna get abducted.
And so you're standing there. Where did it leave? When you went back in, was it still here when you went back in?
It was slowly moving back that way, just making its way towards the south. And then I got back in, and then right when we got inside, that's when the female house manager said, hey, look. And that's when I was right outside like this, just like this. Looked outside through the window, and just this flash, that's it, lights out. Just like a light switch, just lights off. It gives me the chills, and I just don't, it's just stuck in my head. I mean, it wasn't a very big ship, but it was big enough, I guess you could say. It was pretty close, though. Well, it was too close for comfort.
The incident with the bulletproof wolf was only the beginning for the ranch family. During their mind-numbing 20 months on the property, the ranch morphed from a seemingly idyllic setting into a mental and emotional torture chamber. Why, the rancher wondered, did the previous owner insist on being notified before any digging was done on the land? Soon enough, he understood. At different times of the day and night, the family felt the ground shake and heard the sound of metal on metal coming from below, as if a steel mill or railroad operated under their feet.
And there was clear evidence from what they felt was that there was some kind of, a lot of machinery, noises of technology that seemed to come from either underground or deep in the ridge, just to the north of here. They also found that any time there was a disturbance, for example, sometimes they dynamited tree stumps from the ground. They noticed that there was a big increase in the activity immediately following dynamiting these stumps. In other words, large holes in the ground. They couldn't figure out why.
On some nights, large sections of the pasture would light up, illuminated by an unknown source in the sky. Other times, the family witnessed beams of light shoot out of the ground. Vehicles would stall, batteries would die while crossing particular points on the property. Equipment would vanish into thin air. On a few nights, family members heard mocking voices speaking an unknown language, seemingly emanating from the sky a few feet above their heads. So many of the events on the ranch were palpable but fleeting. It meant the credibility of the rancher and other witnesses would eventually be evaluated.
He was an expert marksman, tracker, hunter, horseman, cattle breeder, and he didn't really touch farming, but he had a college education and degrees and certifications that I believe attested to the fact that he had a lot of highly technical training in animal husbandry.
And in this case...
So he was, in other words, he was scientifically astute to some extent.
Eric Davis is a PhD physicist who would later spend 4 years on the ranch as part of a wide-ranging investigation, looking not only at the property and events that occurred, but also conducting extensive background checks into the family, their history, their neighbors.
He is not the only witness to it. I mean, this has been going on, not only the Indians have been seeing it, but a lot of people.
Right, it wasn't just him, it was his wife, his 2 children, his neighbors. The whole Uinta Valley has a 50-year history of phenomena that the Mormon community and all the other non-Mormon members of the community have been experiencing since the 1950s. This includes county board supervisor members, judges, the sheriffs of the various county sheriff departments.
Tell me about the rancher. Now, you came up here, you got to know him, you had beers and barbecues. And
excellent.
At first you thought, maybe this guy is off his rocker?
Well, because due to the fact that 480-acre parcel of paranormal Disneyland down there had so much phenomena experienced by him and his family, different aspects of it, from the mutilations to the opening up in the sky, the holes in the sky, to the different craft, to the poltergeist, to the different entities, including UFOs on the ground, and voices in the air, and so on and so on and so on. I thought, this is, there's just too much of an expression here. I had some doubts there upon visiting with him the first time.
Ryan Layton has chased Uinta UFO stories since the 80s. He introduced himself to the rancher, whose real name has been reported elsewhere. We'll call him Tom Gorman.
What did you come to believe about his truthfulness, his character?
I believe he is being extremely truthful, and I think his character is outstanding. I could see that he was indeed affected emotionally. As you know, he was and also angered because of it. It wasn't this wasn't a joyful thing for him, as you know.
Layton visited Gorman on the ranch 4 times and was told about many, but not all, of the bizarre things that were still unfolding. One incident was distinctly physical. It happened in the 3rd homestead. Someone dug large divots into the pasture. A photo was included in a 1996 newspaper story.
The scoop marks were just an oddity in the pasture there. Some of them were 3 to 4 feet in diameter, and they were scooped, dozens of them in there, and not a natural type of occurrence.
During one of our visits, Colin Kelleher showed us where it happened. Each of the scoops would have weighed hundreds of pounds, meaning some kind of heavy equipment would have been needed. But how did it occur without the rancher noticing?
The rancher came out one morning and was checking down in this area with his cattle. He noticed this scoop mark here, another one just down here, and a third one further down here.
Well, they'd have to take down a series of gates for one, and I don't think so. And I don't. What would be the reasoning for taking such a large, massive soil sampling out of that particular section of the? I mean, what is to be gained by scooping out dozens of odd scoop marks in the pasture?
That incident came in the middle of a wild period for the family. From the first day they moved onto the ranch, they felt like they were being watched. At night, they would hear the sounds of heavy footsteps outside their windows and would see the outlines of black, faceless figures peering in. Eventually, the footsteps and the figures entered the house. There were dozens of unexplained events. Locked doors would open and slam shut. Objects would vanish, then reappear somewhere else. The Utes might describe all this as the work of a trickster. We would more likely call it a poltergeist. Eventually, the family would help investigators compile this list of incidents they remembered. 3 young men, including the rancher's son, spent 4 hours moving a pile of heavy corral poles to a spot near the canal. Later in the day, the entire pile had been moved back to its original spot, but just an inch off. In another instance, a ton of cordwood stacked on one side of a field somehow appeared on the other side of the field in the space of about 30 minutes. Tools, pliers, gloves, even a chainsaw vanished while being used. The chainsaw reappeared 100 yards away. A post hole digger vanished from a field during the rancher's brief lunch break. After he bought a new digger the next day, the first one reappeared, delicately balanced up in a tree. The rancher placed a new flea collar on his dog's neck. It disappeared within a day. 24 hours later, it was back on the dog. Kitchen utensils would go missing while the rancher's wife was cooking meals and would later turn up in the fridge or freezer or microwave. The wife would lock the bathroom door when she took a shower. When she got out of the shower, her towel and hairbrush were gone, though the door was still locked. Weeks' worth of groceries would be unpacked and put away in cupboards. Minutes later, the groceries were back in the shopping bags. Ryan Layton was present on the ranch while some of the incidents were still happening.
Did Terry ever describe to you seeing the beings and things of that sort, or any of the poltergeist trickery kind of things that would happen?
Yes, he did describe some of the trickery to me.
Like, what did he tell you about, you know?
Oh, particularly his fence post, his
post hole digger?
Post hole digger, yes, where he looked long and far, became extremely frustrated, looked for it, and there it was, approximately 30-40 feet up a tree a couple of days later.
Things in the house would
things in the house would move around. Also, I do remember the story about, which stands out in my mind, when you mentioned the poltergeist activity of his son, or I should say the high strangeness of these type of objects. His son had cut with some friends some cord or two of wood and had placed it some distance, maybe 100 yards away from the location, and it had been moved. He came in to get a drink of water, and it was moved.
The The whole cord of
Well,
wood.
yeah, the whole cord of wood within, just a few moments. I believe it was about a 100-yard distance or something to that nature.
Junior Hicks, the science teacher who investigated UFO cases, said these trickster incidents were common among other witnesses who had encountered UFOs, but it often took a long time for them to open up about their unusual experiences. The family needed help, and help was on its way.
Bob Bigelow is one of the most enigmatic individuals that you ever hear about. The guy's got 2 private orbiting space stations for study. He's an individual connected through government contracts. Skinwalker Ranch. He's allowed you to be there a number of times. He's really let you in.
Bob Bigelow is probably the most misunderstood person in the entire field of ufology. He's not a ufologist. He's a wealthy businessman who happens to have an interest in the topic. He has spent more money trying to pursue UFO truth than any person in the history of the world.
What is Bigelow's endgame? What is his curiosity? What is his interest? Why is he doing this?
The interest is personal. It comes from family experiences. It's what got him hungry about the topic to begin with. People have the craziest ideas about Bob Bigelow. I've seen the descriptions of him. He's shadowy. He's drug business. He's in the tea business. He's a gun runner. He's a casino owner. Crazy stuff. He's only interested in this so he can capture the technology and build his own spacecraft and take the elite off this planet. All he's done is give his resources to trying to find out what's going on. For example, he gave $1 million to the UFO organizations, told them, here's $1 million. You don't have any resources. You're always bitching about not having any money. Here's $1 million. You just got to figure out a way to get along and divvy it up and make sure it goes to actual research. Of course, they fucked it up. They fucked it up because they couldn't get along. He said, I want to establish a training program where we have a strike force, kind of a rapid response team. So when you've got a UFO flap, you've got a big case, you've got the money to jump on a plane, send some people there, have boots on the ground, and investigate it. And of course, he was pilloried for it. He created NIDS, National Institute for Discovery Science. He was so disgusted by MUFON, by the UFO organizations and their lack of progress, he created his own UFO organization. There's never been a gathering of great minds as great as these in one pursuit of UFO truth in the history of the world. This board that he put together, the makeup of this board, some of them, their names still are not public. They don't want it to hurt their careers, but man, that's an amazing group of people. And I've been there, and they don't come in with an agenda. They weren't there to create their own flying saucer fleet. The idea was they devote their time, their own time, to pursuing UFO truth because they thought there's something important going on here. It's worth spending our time to pursue this. And they gave a lot, volunteered a lot, and no one gave more than Bigelow, and no one has been beaten up more than Bigelow because of it. It's ridiculous.
Is there something that has shaken Bigelow or shaken you about the ranch?
Bob's interest in the ranch was primarily an interest in UFOs. He bought the place because people had been seeing UFOs. The flying saucers, traditional UFO stuff, that was his interest. But of course, as he and his team learned, there's a lot more to it than that. They had no idea what they were getting, I think. When they bought the place, they heard bits and pieces here and there. They interviewed the family and heard these stories, but I don't think they could possibly imagine how far it would go. Have there been experiences there that have shaken the people involved? Absolutely. And I think Bob Bigelow would be included in that. I can't tell you. I can't tell you what it is, but I can tell you he's had some dramatic episodes that have convinced him that something is real, there. And his team have had those episodes. I mean, these are PhD level guys who have worked for every three-letter agency you can imagine, who are there because they want to know what's going on. They've worked for the Pentagon and CIA and other agencies and in scientific think tanks, bright PhD level people who are there investigating this mystery, and it has scared the shit out of them. I mean, it's confronted them directly. It's one thing to be reading about UFOs or other realities or interdimensionals in a book. It's another thing to be staring at it right in the face and for it to be communicating with you and telling you, get out, you're not welcome. And that's happened there.
In 1978, a local newspaper reported high activity in the Uinta Basin. Silver dome-shaped objects were seen, flying saucers. Some witnesses observing the display from close proximity, from underneath the craft. UFOs were buzzing the locals with jagged green lights like fire. Nothing really changes. It's constant. The phenomenon is engaging people. It's a pattern of close encounters. It's commonplace. People hunt the cause. Scientists investigate the carnage. The NIDS team tried to quantify the performances. They created control studies for plant growth. They monitored the environment. They calculated the variables. They analyzed every event. But mostly, they waited for the phenomenon to express itself. And the phenomenon seemed to toy with them, to play games with them. Silence followed by dramatic displays of control. It did what it wanted. It does what it wants. To anybody. What's your name?
Oh, my name's Janice Puyap.
And where do you live in relation to Skinwalker Ranch?
I just live west of Skinwalker Ranch.
What was that exact moment when you transitioned from being skeptical, a non-believer, to being a believer?
Yeah, describe the incident itself.
The 4 heifers were in the north field, and I could hear them bellowing, but we couldn't figure out where they were. My bright idea was, well, let's get the spotlight. At nighttime, let's get that spotlight, and we'll go through the tree line like this. You have to see eyes. I said, then that'll give us a general idea where they're at night, so we can set up panels and run them back over to the house. So we're going, they were bellowing, so we're going, but I couldn't see nothing. So I turned it on, I said, okay, let's listen. And when I went, let's listen, that's when that light came. It came clear from the sky. I mean, it hit like this, and it lit up the whole truck.
And it physically hit you, the light?
Yeah, it literally came down in and lit up everything. I was like, wait a minute. And I turned back, I said, that's not possible. That is not possible. And that's when I started, like, something's here and it's real. And I just got an eye-opener, because I was a non-believer before that.
So that was the experience that changed it for you, where you realized...
I'm sorry. I just kind of got up for a minute. Forgive me. Okay.
What's overwhelming?
Because my neighbor, Charlie Wynn, after that big mothership or whatever you want to call it, or I don't know, he'd stop by every day on his way home from work. His face was so red, I couldn't believe it. When I looked up, he said, that light hit me. He said, it scared the shit out of me so bad. He said, I was crawling in the ditch to get that water to cool him off. He got cancer and it killed him, and I always think, I wonder if it was from that, because I mean, it was like, you know how somebody has like a real bad burn and it's just so red and deep?
This is something that is really important for this whole story, this phenomenon. So can you just tell me what that wave of emotion was?
My son was diagnosed just last year, and it's hard to deal with it because that's your baby, you know. And when it first started out, it was like I was hitting brick walls. And I'm like, Lord, you know, I'm not the perfect person, but why?
Do you fear that the phenomenon has something to do with these illnesses, like with your son and your friends?
It kind of makes me believe because, like I said, my son was strong as a bull.
So there is a element of fear for the ones you love,
Yeah.
that there is a malevolence to it, you know, an evil that seems to be attacking the health of those you love.
Yeah.
That is something you believe to be true.
Yes.
So all the people have been exposed to some kind of experience.
What question is it that you would like answered? What answer are you looking to find?
Is it really real, or is it something the government's doing? Is it really like an entity or beings or what? Is it real, or is it government made up?
What do you think?
I think it's real.
A beast prowls the darkness outside of Skinwalker Ranch. It's Lucy, the Wonder Dog. She made the long drive with us to the Uinta Basin in part because Lucy can see and hear things that we can't. The same reasons the NIDS team relied on dogs during the long study of the ranch. Dogs were considered to be friends as well as biosensors, able to detect unusual activity beyond the range of human senses. Soon after Robert Bigelow purchased the property, the NIDS team built observation towers in 3 pastures with sturdy metal fences around each tower. On many nights, dogs were stationed inside the fences.
The construction of those dog runs and the viewing platforms also was kind of like a communication thing. The idea was to put dogs in the dog runs who are extremely good biosensors. They would alert the humans. But at the same time, during the construction of these dog runs, there was a whole bunch of anomalies happened at these dog runs.
An unknown trickster kept opening the gates and letting the dogs loose. Perplexed, NIDS secured the gates with thick wire. The wire vanished. Then they installed strong padlocks. The padlocks disappeared.
Gates were left open. The locks were gone. There was like 7 or 8 separate incidents that happened at several of these dog runs just after construction. And if you wanted to read a message into that, you could say the same sort of thing, that, you know, these measures are essentially useless. They can be interfered with, they can be compromised, they can be screwed with, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Kelleher and the NIDS team were initially optimistic. After Robert Bigelow bought the so-called UFO ranch, the team brought in its own double-wide command center, installed surveillance cameras and other sensors, and tried to find prosaic explanations for the wild stories. They surveyed the basin for geomagnetic anomalies, searched the property for hallucinogenic plants, interviewed the family, their neighbors, and a wide circle of other eyewitnesses.
There's a lot of people interested in this stuff, and you get a lot of calls.
The scientists on the team were not there to confirm local myths.
NIDS was designed to be a high-risk, high-payoff institute. A lot of high risk for the topic we were after. That ranch, I think, was the epitome of what we were after. Like I said, it was a living laboratory that we could set up and control the conditions. We can rigorously monitor. the environment. We can rigorously attempt to monitor the phenomena as it moved within that environment out there at that ranch.
Physicist Dr. Eric Davis, who has worked for military think tanks and prominent labs, was skeptical about UFO tales and spooky stories until he made his first visit to the ranch. That's when he and others witnessed an orange globe that turned blue, then landed.
Up and it'd be a clear orange ball, and then a mist would appear and it'd be blue again, and so forth. And it alternated this way until it finally descended below the background mountains, and it descended in. Now, when I mean below, I mean the mountaintops. It didn't descend behind the mountains. It descended in front of the mountains.
That sighting occurred before NIDS installed its camera system, but even with cameras positioned around the property, the phenomena proved elusive.
We had cameras that were recording data on a continuous basis. Frequently, things would happen just off the camera. Like it knew where you're looking, says, okay, we'll do this where you're not looking.
The cameras did catch perplexing images over the years, darting orbs that seemed under intelligent control, a fan-shaped array of lights recorded more than once near the bottom of the ridge, something resembling an aircraft contrail that emanated from the ground, and this, the ghostly silhouettes of structures that reminded the team of New York's Twin Towers. The images are evidence, but of what? By 1998, the NIDS team already had 78 incidents from the vicinity of the ranch, including 11 nuts and bolts structured craft reports, as well as a few dozen orbs of different colors, and another that sliced the tops off several trees in the third homestead. The rancher showed the damage to Ryan Layton and joked it must have been a case of pilot error.
The top part of the trees were kind of almost squared out, almost like in a square. And those are probably maybe 80 to 100 feet tall cottonwood trees, and the branches were probably, say, 40 to 50, 60 feet. Some of the branches, very lengthy, and they were on the ground and they're broken off.
That same section of the property is where the rancher saw his first UFO. He initially thought it might be a wayward Winnebago that somehow got onto his property.
It was shaped like a refrigerator, like box-shaped, with a light on one end of it. When he first saw it in the distance, he was with his nephew, and it was dark, but he saw the light, and he presumed that they were hunters or there were somebody trespassing on his property. So he and his nephew started walking towards it. It started moving slowly away from where they were walking, and this all happened further east of here. But the thing started clearing a fence, and that's when they began to think something unusual was happening. And they couldn't actually see the shape of it until they kept on pursuing it, and then it went over a tree line.
So an RV that goes over a tree line?
Yeah, it actually went over the tree line, and as it was silhouetted against the sky, they saw the shape of it. It was like a refrigerator, flying refrigerator. And it was completely silent.
Ground zero for odd sightings was always the middle homestead. At nights, lights and orbs could be seen floating through the creaky old buildings. It's also where the rancher had multiple sightings of the most puzzling object, an orange glowing hole in the sky. Gorman told Kelleher and others the orange ball seemed to be a portal, and on the other side was a, quote, different sky. On at least one occasion, the rancher saw a smaller object fly out of the orange orb into the sky over his property. The exotic possibility that the ranch might be a portal to another world has occurred many times to the NIDS team, but how to prove it? In August 1996, the portal theory erupted again in a stark demonstration. The rancher and an investigator were conducting a night surveillance atop the ridges. They spotted a hovering ball of light in the middle homestead.
An object that was seen 4 feet off the ground, that it looked like a dull yellow light. I mean, it was innocuous.
Hovering over the road. It just appeared out of nowhere. And then it begins to expand and grow, and then it opens up into about approximately 3 foot wide opening.
They turned on the night vision equipment they had, and lo and behold, everything from a dull yellow light became like a three-dimensional, it looked like a three-dimensional tunnel that was just, hovering over the ground.
Where there's a light coming out from within this opening. On the other side of the opening, this is just the natural background of the ranch. They see the road, they see the grass from the pasture and so forth.
Slowly, this incident unfolded where they saw this, what looked like a humanoid creature, crawling, literally elbowing his or her way through this tunnel, hovering 4 feet above the ground.
And out of this opening crawls a very large, what I understood to be an 8-foot tall black creature with a head and no neck, and a torso, arms and legs. No details or features noted on it.
There was a second witness standing right beside the other guy with the infrared technology. All he could see was a dull yellow light that had expanded to about 4 feet in diameter.
It just literally grabbed the outside edges of this opening, pulled itself through, came out, stepped onto the dirt road, and ran off into the darkness.
The creature stood up once it got out onto the ground and walked away into the darkness. I mean, can you imagine two people on the top of a cliff or a sort of a bluff 150 feet off the ground in the middle of nowhere?
And then the opening began to shrink and collapse in on itself and turned into a brilliant light that just faded away. That's a perfect description that was given by Matt Visser and John Kramer and Bob Forward and other colleagues of theirs in a physical review paper on the optical nature of wormholes.
I mean, that is not, I would say, military technology. That's some kind of a phenomena that has, it smacks of interdimensional phenomena.
Tribal elders believe this ridge is a path used by the Skinwalker as it moves from one place to another. The question becomes, where does it live? The answer, according to the tribe, is Dark Canyon, a place steeped in legend and superstition, dominated by tall pines and spirits from other realities. With the help of our Uinta friends, we obtained something rarely given, permission from the tribe to bring our cameras into the heart of Dark Canyon. We soon found that the name fits. While there, we heard encounter tales from a young woman named Shelby.
It was reflective, and the reflection of the light was what caught my eye. As we were watching the hikers come up and over the mountain, up in the corner, like in the crook of the mountain, there was a saucer that had come up and over and down and back down. And I tried pointing it out to her, and she was too late, but that's
a saucer?
Yeah, it was pretty significant in size.
Classic flying saucer.
I don't think there's anyone else in my family who's willing to admit what goes on.
Is this the kind of thing that runs in the family?
For me and my mother, it does.
I think it's because you and your mother are open to this?
I don't necessarily think we're open to it. I think that it comes to us.
Is this your first time talking about it publicly?
Yeah. Yep.
Are you worried about the reaction?
I am, just because of my profession. I worry that it's gonna follow me, and
You work in public education, so I guess you have to worry, what will my employer think about it?
yeah. Yep.
Have you ever told anybody you work with that you've had experiences that we'll discuss?
I have. Everybody has their story. A lot of the times with my experiences, I put them on a shelf and I don't like to think about them or revisit them because they've impacted, or I try not to let them impact me. I'm so disassociated with it that I don't think about it. I think that's something that I've repressed.
Do you have a missing time experience?
I do.
Can you share that?
I woke up around 1 o'clock and I remember that I sat up. I remember being aware of what I was doing but not having control over what I was doing. And I got out of bed and I walked into their living room dining area. And I looked to their window that oversaw their dining room table, and I remember seeing two bright spotlights. And next thing I remember is I was facing the opposite direction, more towards their stove, looking at the clock, and at that time it was 8 o'clock, and I went back to bed. And
So 5 or 6 hours had passed?
yeah.
And you're standing looking at a stove?
Yep.
And you don't know how you got
I
there?
don't know how I got there.
Tell us a little bit about the nature of the light. How bright?
I remember it illuminating the entire area.
How bright? What was the nature of the light?
Undescribable.
Was it as bright as day?
It was brighter. It was I can't even describe to you, like no LED, no flashlight, nothing can compare to the brightness of those lights and to the whiteness of the lights.
Brighter than the sun. It's like nothing you've seen before. These experiences, have they changed you?
I think so.
What is it about this area, the basin? Is it the tribe? Is it the people that live here that attracts all this different stuff?
I don't
Or
know.
is it everywhere?
I don't know. I have no clue.
Some people call them, they refer to them as hitchhikers, that these things follow you around.
From my own experiences, if you invite something, it will come and it'll become attached to you, and it'll stay attached until you tell it to leave.
The unfortunate thing is this weird phenomena is not amenable to laboratory testing where we can control the conditions. We thought we could. We attempted to. We tried as much as we could within the boundaries of our budget to control conditions, and it turned out the phenomena controlled us and controlled itself. It basically did everything it could to avoid us, absolutely. It did not want to engage and interact us that much after the first year and a half that we were there working on that property. That phenomena, I am sure, was cognizant of our presence there and basically did not want to allow us to detect it, record it and film it in any form or fashion.
Like all of the investigators who tried to crack the mysteries of the ranch, physicist Dr. Eric Davis became frustrated by the elusive nature of the target. Dr. John Alexander, the former Army intelligence officer, coined the term precognitive sentient intelligence to describe the entity on the ranch. Precognitive because it could anticipate what came next.
One of the things that happened in Utah at the ranch that was very perplexing was it seemed like whatever was presenting the phenomena to us knew what we were going to do and what was going to be responded, and would do something different.
The family that lived on the property felt from the beginning that it was being watched, that something was pulling strings, playing tricks. Of all the strange incidents that were reported on the ranch, one in particular stands alone.
There's a trickster element to it.
Yeah, there's a trickster element to it, and I think the biggest one that really would blow most people's minds, scientists or anybody trying to analyze this, of course, is the account of the bulls in the trailer.
There were 4 2,000-pound bulls in this little corral here.
1999. Earlier in the day, the rancher had come across strange tracks in the dense brush on the edge of the Middle homestead. Tracks unlike anything he'd ever seen. The family was on edge because by that point, they'd lost a dozen or more head of expensive cattle. They couldn't afford to lose any more.
About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the rancher and his wife were driving past on their way down to the west end of the property to check on their other animals. So these were their 4 best thoroughbred, registered Black Angus and Simmental bulls. They were like very valuable animals, thousands of dollars each. And, you know, Terry and Gwen, or the rancher and his wife, as they were driving past, remarked on how devastating it would be to them financially if they lost those animals.
It was as if someone overheard their concerns. When they returned to the corral an hour later,
and they were driving past the corral here on this track when they realized no bulls. The bulls were gone from the corral. So they panicked, you know, they ran over here searching, and the entire corral was empty. And then just out of kind of instinct, the rancher climbed over into the corral, into this corral here, and walked over to this trailer.
Trailer was used to store tools and other equipment. There was only one way into it, and the only latch was still secured by heavy wire, just as the rancher had left it.
The door was still locked. This latch was actually pulled way down here. It was obvious it had never been opened. It was pulled down here. This was locked. This doorway here was open, and he looked in, and all 4 animals were standing there like totally dazed. And to work with even a single bull, getting him into an enclosed space like this would be almost impossible. To get 4 2,000-pound bulls into a tiny, tiny enclosed space where they were squashed up against each other would be completely impossible. But anyway, Terry yelled, or the rancher yelled to his wife that he had found the animals, and his yell just seemed to wake them up out of this catatonic trance or daze they were in. And suddenly they just went ape. When they realized they were in this crammed space, they went crazy. They started kicking down the sides of this thing, and they kicked one of the doors. There's a boarded door at the other end there. They kicked the door open, and they just went absolutely wild. They destroyed the inside of this trailer in like minutes. Eventually, it took the rancher and his wife about 4 hours to herd the animals back through here and in here. And in the space of an hour, something had induced or forced or persuaded those 4 extremely aggressive animals to cram themselves into this trailer without opening this door. This door was not opened because we actually checked that to see there was cobwebs and all of that on the inside of the door, and it was quite obvious from this setup here that this had not been moved at all. We've moved it back and forth when we've examined this since then, but these animals, in response to what Terry, or to the rancher and his wife had said, obviously had been put in there as some kind of a prank, whatever. Again, to underline anxiety, to create anxiety in the rancher and his wife that they had lost their animals.
This is a photo of the bulls taken a few hours after they were released, and they were still in a surly mood. The NIDS team wasn't on the property at the time of the incident, but arrived soon after. Almost as strange as the treatment of the bulls was the physical evidence left at the scene. The bars of the corral had been magnetized.
Examining this metal structure, all along the length of the metal structure, it was extremely highly magnetized. The entire corral here, there was magnetic field deviation for several hours on this corral, and then it just kind of dissipated. But very strong magnetic field along this entire length of corral. That was the only clue that was found to what happened here, and it doesn't even tie into how exactly it happened.
So you can't just say it was teenagers who came into the corral and got these bulls into this thing somehow.
No, you need to be extremely, even to get one bull into this corral. I mean, forcing a bull to climb up this into an enclosed space is just impossible, you know. And the fact is, it was verified pretty well convincingly that this door had not opened in the interim. And that's the only way in from the corral. I mean, it's another one of these brain teasers, you know. How exactly was it done? Why was it done? All of that.
In the Uinta Basin, you are being visited by something that appears to be non-human.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What is your full name?
My name is Gary Joaquin Liebach Puyup.
I got to talk with your mom and kind of hear her perspective over months and months on the phone, and finally we had an interview. The moment that changed your mom's ideas, do you know the one I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
It was dead night. We just stepped out of our truck. I'm just walking my own way and she's walking this way. Then out of nowhere, it just lit up bright as this, and just as you see in the windows, that's how bright it was, just went back to black.
That's what I hear from so many people. They always say it was brighter than the sun.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a lot of reports of lights from the sky coming down and hitting people. And some people have gotten sick from that, like burns. And you described one experience of that.
Yes.
So there have been negative health effects from the burns. So just to get personal, let me ask you first, you have a medical condition.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
It's MS. I got MS. I'm only 30 years old. First one in family history. I'm the only one.
it's hard for your mom. You can see it's hard for her, right? I mean, any family.
Yeah.
One thing she asked is she was curious if these lights had any negative impact on your guys' health. Do you feel there's any connection to that, or do you feel it's just not that?
I feel like it's not.
These things you're seeing.
I remember I was just hearing that ringing again, but it was only on one side, on my left side. I used my cane and that walk around and get right here. I saw the moon, as bright it was. Then I just see this object, a white object, circling it. Then it came back around and it did it again. Then it just went and it went backwards towards it, and I can remember seeing it just jolt and just see that weird flash. I guess it probably noticed me or something, then it just took off.
You're talking about craft. Craft with unusual propulsion.
Yes.
So it's not just the ranch, it's all around the Uinta Basins, around your home, around your property. Whatever this phenomenon is, it's all around you here.
Yes.
Some people have been harmed by these. Their lives have been changed. Once you see something like this, you can never see the world the same again.
It just has to happen to you. Something is here.
Is it real?
Oh, yes, I believe it is much real. All those deniers, then just come out here. I don't care how many numbers. They just got to have that kind of experience, but it's a gamble. Some days they're here, some days they're not. It will take days, weeks, months just to have just one little experience. I think just one. Even just seeing a light or a UFO just coming by, just once, just get that one image, just like that, and it will just be with them for the rest of their life. Just that one little piece.
Why does this area have so many things all concentrated?
I think there's a main porthole somewhere here.
There are big displays, and the cops are called out. Something is coming over this area, beaming lights. Your concern last time was, is this having negative effects on the people I love? And is it government, or is it entities, other beings? You're both nodding your heads of tell. So what is it? What does that mean?
What could it be? Is it from here, or is it from somewhere else? The other side, or a different world, or somewhere, different solar system? Just visiting. The universe is wild. There's many planets. I don't know. I really would like to know. Maybe find out at least something.
If people wanted to come and visit this place, your area, would you advise them to do that or to not do that?
If you're curious, come and see yourself, because I can sit here and tell you forever all my experiences, but that's me.
But there are risks.
But yes, there is risks. You might see something you can't handle, or you might experience entity, I'm gonna say, that you can't handle. And so, yeah, I don't know, it's hard. Yes and no. It'd be up to that individual.
The Gormans were especially sensitive to the incident with the bulls because of the losses they'd already suffered. Out of a herd of 80 cattle, they lost 14 head prior to the arrival of NIDS. Some disappeared, others were sliced up. 12 more cows and calves were killed while NIDS was on the ranch. Their neighbors, the Garcias, lost several animals as well. Some of their cattle appeared to have been killed by being dropped onto the pasture from a great height. The cattle mutilation mystery has been reported in at least 15 states dating back to the 1960s. Thousands of animals have been sliced up with surgical precision, mostly under the cover of darkness. If humans are doing it, not a single suspect has ever been caught. For the Gormans, the livestock losses were devastating, both financially and psychologically. And then things got worse. On March 10, 1997, Tom Gorman and his wife walked out of their home and into the pasture, planning to tag the ears of several calves that had been born in the preceding days. It was a bright, clear morning. Snow was on the ground. 50 yards from their house, they found the first calf.
They were with their dog. The two of them tagged and weighed this animal. They checked it at, I believe it was 84 pounds or 87 pounds. And they left the animal there with the mother. Everything seemed to be fine, although they did detect an odor in the air around this area. They detected a strong musk smell. They took note of it, and then they headed west. And they went about 300 yards west beyond the dog run was not there at the time, but about 300 yards beyond, towards where that incline is, and they were tagging a second animal.
Only 30 to 40 minutes had passed. The Gormans had an unobstructed view of everything in the field, but didn't see or hear anything unusual until their dog focused its attention back toward the house and the first calf.
The dog with them down here at this stage began to act really strangely. It started growling, the hair on the back of its neck went up, and it started facing back towards here, growling and snarling, and then it just took off west, away from this spot. It just took off. It was never seen again.
The Gormans were curious and walked back across the field.
First thing they saw was the mother of the animal was running back and forth, kind of in a sort of half circle from about this area to the fence line, just running back and forth, and it was limping. I mean, it was dragging its foot, it was limping. They met the animal and they noticed that it was just totally out of breath. It was panting, it was obviously in deep stress, and it was dragging one leg.
And then they noticed the calf, or what was left of it.
Spread-eagled on the ground, just about here, with it was lying with all four limbs just spread on the ground. All of its internal body cavity was gone. It was completely, pretty well, all of its muscle was gone from the torso. The legs were still intact, but the one of the ears was also gone. So they called NIDS.
The rancher placed a call to the NIDS investigators who'd returned to Las Vegas for a rare weekend off. Within a few hours, a four-man team, including a veterinarian, was on the scene.
Necropsy started, and the first thing that the veterinarian noticed during the necropsy was that the ear of the animal had been sliced off with a very sharp instrument, possibly a scalpel, and the ear had contained a very large plastic yellow tag, like an ear tag that they had just put on, and it was gone. So the necropsy proceeded. About 10 feet away from the animal, there was a femur. One of the femurs had been forcibly ripped out of a ball and socket joint, which is extremely difficult to do, I mean, in terms of strength. It looked initially, superficially, like a massive predator had just lain waste to this animal, removed, 60 pounds of meat in 45 minutes, which we don't know of any predator that could have done that.
And how could a predator inflict such carnage without being seen or heard by the rancher, his wife, or his dog, who were a few hundred yards away in the same field on what was a quiet Sunday morning? No four-legged predator known to science could do it. The team gathered tissue and bone samples, which were sent to 3 independent pathology labs. The results arrived later, but confirmed what seemed obvious in the pasture that day. The calf had been carved up by someone wielding sharp, metallic instruments. A heavy machete-like object had slammed into the bones. A smaller scalpel-like knife had sliced the hide and muscle.
But closer inspection revealed that it was definitely sharp instruments used. There was no sign of blood. There was no sign of entrails around. It was perfectly clean. Not a drop of blood on the grass. We went even as far as doing an experiment by pouring blood on the grass to see how fast it would seep through. Videotaped the grass and showed, even 2 days later, you could still see the stain on the grass. So there was no blood whatsoever, not a single drop, either underneath the animal, on the animal, or on the grass. It was just completely clean.
A professional tracker was brought in. He scoured every inch of ground in and around the field, looking for tracks, human, animal, or vehicle. Nothing. Eventually, the investigators reached an unsettling conclusion.
The bottom line is this animal must have been killed elsewhere because there was no blood. There was no blood on the scene, and then the animal must have been brought back, laid down carefully, almost, really almost ritually on the spot where it had been tagged.
The NIDS team investigated dozens of mutilation cases across the country. Many of the tissue samples were analyzed in NIDS' own lab in Las Vegas and then double-checked by independent labs they hired. The Utah calf was in a category all its own. It seemed akin to psychological warfare, intended to shock and frighten the witnesses. The following night, there was another scare in the darkness of the first homestead. Shots were fired at something that had rattled the herd. Eventually, Colum Kelleher surmised that the perpetrators responsible for the calf were mechanical, like an assembly line in a meatpacking plant. A machine was involved with this carnage.
Whatever happened to that calf was an extraordinarily skillful job.
Mutilations are clearly one aspect we can put our finger on, that we can quantify to a degree. Physical evidence remains after the event, and we grasp to it in search of answers. Who is performing these horrific acts of violence? Are they meant to unsettle us? Why? And are there even answers to be found in these questions? During the time of the NIDS investigations, the phenomenon recorded and documented was more than elusive. It never actually repeated itself. From creatures to craft, from disembodied voices to trickster-like paranormal activity, it was a cosmic game of cat and mouse. Dark, shadowy beings observed climbing out of orange, glowing geometric portholes. Silent craft carving out chunks of tree branches as they traversed the landscape. Geomagnetic anomalies sending compasses into tailspins. Events indicating a precognitive ability by the phenomenon to know the next move of the investigators. This area has been described as a paranormal Disneyland. If it's weird, it's happened in the Uinta Basin. But by far, the most constant theme in the area has always remained focused on UFOs. Ships that appear without discrimination, but not just passive UFO sightings. Sightings that are participatory, experiences that tend to communicate with observers, interact with them. It's been happening in the area since humans settled there, and it continues to this day. Why are you keeping your identity secret?
I have chosen to keep my identity confidential to not only protect the integrity of our effort and to avoid distractions that would potentially compromise our efforts, but also to maintain a level of professionalism in my other business activities and enterprises. I have a vast empire of business interests that I cannot allow to be compromised by virtue of any disclosure of my involvement in this effort.
Everybody wants to know, what is going on at the ranch now? Have you continued the research and have you amplified it?
We have entered an entirely new and expanded era of scientific investigation at Skinwalker Ranch. Since acquiring the property 2 years ago from Mr. Bigelow, we have installed significant security enhancements in addition to scientific instrumentation that has allowed us to not only better understand, but also better document the high strangeness and the anomalies that have been reported for decades, if not millennia.
And wow, and that's right here in the field.
Solid craft.
Wow.
And then, is it familiar? Corral. We're looking right up.
Where we're sitting.
Yep.
Wow. Millennium Falcon.
Exactly. It's about the closest thing to it. And this was one of the most surprising things that we recorded right after I purchased the ranch, was this image. And again, according to all of the flight data for the Uinta Basin and Utah during that day, there was no other commercial or private flight traffic. Here's another craft that was captured over the ranch. We've been recording both seismic and infrasonic activity in the area. One thing we found from our infrasonic studies, there are unexplained signals. Our chief scientist, it's like nothing he's ever recorded, the patterns that he's found on the ranch. What I am most interested in is what is so unique about this property? Why is this the center of gravity for the unexplained, all sorts of high strangeness? And how far back? So this is the first of 3 observation towers. 20 years ago, Bob Bigelow built them, and he built them as bait pens and observation towers. They put cattle, livestock in the bait pens to see if they would react as biosensors to unseen activity, because the scientists were noticing things that were more what we would call predator-like, that were camouflage, chameleon effect. This is a disturbing part of the ranch. It is the historic record that really attests to the fact that for some reason there have been strange activities recorded in this area. Strange lights in the sky, unidentified aerial craft, cattle mutilations going back to as early as 1920, 1930. You see how remote this is to a degree out here right now. You can imagine back in the 1920s, 1930s.
I'm stepping in there. You need a foundation.
I still am prayerful. I believe that we're not alone, and I don't think there are any coincidences. And that's the thing that is scary about what we're seeing here on the ranch. When you have craft darting about in the sky that are not showing up on any radar, that are not accounted for, and things happening to people that are beyond their control, you think of the national security implications. It really does speak to the fact that we don't have any idea really what the true nature of reality
I had
is.
one right above my head, and I could hit it with a tennis ball. Yeah.
And it was a solid.
Yeah, it was solid. So you don't get anything while you're here.
I feel great. No, I'm impervious to evil, man. It's the thing I got going.
Oh really? How'd you get that going for yourself, being impervious to evil?
Genetics.
What do you have to say to people who think this is not a real phenomenon?
They're delusional. anyone who does their due diligence, anyone who is a sincere seeker of truth, that actually looks into this, will find that there is absolute truth to what is happening. There is legitimacy, and it is perhaps the most important scientific effort of our time. The game has changed.
Does this bring back memories to your first trip to the ranch?
Well, yeah. I mean, the only other time we did this was the first trip that I ever made here, and we built a fire and we made a bunch of noise, did kind of things that this group has been doing today and yesterday, and tried to attract the attention of something. It didn't work, and whatever that's here, it plays by its own rules. It shows you what it wants to, when it wants to. For NIDS, when they came in like gangbusters. They end up bringing a lot of technical expertise and equipment, scientific measuring equipment, to try to figure out what's out here. But the phenomena itself always seemed to be one step ahead of the team that was trying to figure it out. Whatever is here, it toys with whomever is trying to figure it out. I mean, it plays games, it messes with your mind. It seems to know what you're going to do before you do it, and it gives you glimpses only when you don't expect it and you're not ready for it. There's a suggestion from what's here is all these different phenomena that you wouldn't normally associate with each other, UFOs and poltergeist and Bigfoot and cattle mutilations, all those things in one place. It's almost like it's telling us they're all related on some level, and it's up to you to figure it out.
I've been out here, a number of times with you, and I wanted to have an experience that was not good, to be honest with you. I did, because I wanted to see for myself, but I've only had really good experience. I tried to trick myself into feeling like, ooh, something's terrifying, but I've just felt good. You didn't expect to see anything, but it'd be cool if you did.
If it was just scary, I can deal with that. But if I have a hitchhiker that comes on and takes me over, I couldn't deal with that. So I'm scared of that. But we do have a saying in England, and it's in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm here, so I might as well. And I survived the last one. I don't know if I can afford any more hitchhikers. So I'll say that out loud to the hitchhikers of the galaxy. Don't come home with me.
We all talk about evidence. Well, what is evidence to you? Is evidence a photograph? Is it a video? A lot of what I have is witness testimony. Witness testimony is evidence. So my question is, does there become a point where testimony becomes so weighty that it just has value?
The witness testimony is what got me into this. I mean, admirals, generals, pilots, that's what initially got me into this stuff. So yes, that has weight, but would I love to see, a portal open up right there? Yeah, I really would.
It's just I've got the point where I don't have the luxury of disbelief anymore. I don't know what that means. It doesn't mean I know anything. I just don't have the luxury of disbelief.
If I'm honest, I should not have the luxury to disbelieve either. I believe there's other stuff there. I've said it. I always try and qualify that with, but I'm not sure because I might be crazy, and don't worry about me. I'm just an idiot. But I do believe.
So I guess I just want to hear a little bit, from George. Why do you want this out now?
The universe is more mysterious and wondrous and complicated than we imagine. Reality is more complicated than what it might seem.
Full stop.
Yeah.
I thought that coming in about 6 years ago, that if we essentially threw personnel and equipment at this problem on this property as well as elsewhere, and if we really pulled out the stops in terms of chemical analysis, that we probably would get answers. But any answers that we've got don't seem to fit the overall thinking. And I'm thinking mostly of the kinds of chemical analysis that have been carried out on the UFO artifacts, as well as some of the preliminary chemical analysis we've done on the mutilations, I don't think that there's an iota of evidence from any of that stuff that really nails the extraterrestrial thing. There's really no strong evidence that it's extraterrestrial. That has that's a fly in the ointment. It's really against the predictions, it's counterintuitive. If anything, that has created more questions than I originally had coming into this whole thing.
Essentially, the ranch became a testing ground, a proving ground, if you will, applying the scientific method. This team, this group of multidisciplinary scientists, both on the staff and of the Science Advisory Board, to attempt to solve a problem using the scientific method. And we couldn't do it. The scientific method is not amenable to these kind of problems. It is not that malleable. It's not that flexible to be able to apply easily to a problem such as this, which is non-repeatable. Every time a phenomenon occurs, it's not always the same one as before. It's always something new and always something different.
The phenomena was playing with us, giving us only a taste here and there of various things. An opportunity to see things that were abnormal, opportunity to cause examinations upon performances of things that were very unique through certain pathological kinds of investigations. The performances didn't repeat themselves. Each time there would be a performance of a sort, there was always some unique pattern. It was something that was always changed. So we would be prepared that if this type of event happened again, we know what to do. Well, that exact same event never happened again. It would always be something completely different. Every time we would come up with some method of observation or calibration, it seemed that we were always outguessed. It became obvious that we obviously weren't the ones in control. We were along for the ride, and that a lot of these exhibitions were exhibitions for gamesmanship or instruction, in that kind of context.
People say secrets can't be kept. They're full of shit. Secrets can be kept. Secrets are kept. Big secrets.
It took 2 decades for this story to even begin to open up. And what's most interesting is how it relates to what's happening now.
There's a whole fleet of them. My gosh. It's rotating. Nickel 6-1 Tango, small J. Roger. There's troubleshooting. Can you box moving target? Here, too. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow. Look at the fly.
What is the link between the current releases by the Department of Defense using the New York Times to get out 2 videos, now 3? What is the connection between that and the ranch?
So it's kind of a long and winding road with a lot of acronyms involved, but here's the basics. December 2017, the New York Times breaks a story about the existence of a secret UFO program in the Pentagon. And while many of us have long suspected they had something going, we didn't know exactly what it was. Well, it turns out it's something called ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. A guy named Lou Elizondo comes forward. He says he is the point man for this program. In addition, we learned that there was a contract given out and it involved BASS, Bigelow Advanced Aerospace, within Bigelow Aerospace here in Las Vegas, and that a study had been conducted, $22 million, and that part of that study focused on Skinwalker Ranch. A lot of people assumed that ATIP and BASS were almost synonymous, that the money for ATIP and BASS came from the same pot, that it was the same program. Fact is, it wasn't. BASS was involved with something else. BASS was under a much larger program, the existence of which has not been made public yet. But BASS was not part of ATIP. ATIP did communicate with BASS. There was exchange of information back and forth. But it wasn't ATIP that went to the ranch. It was somebody else. BASS investigators went to the property, investigated it, interviewed witnesses, collected evidence, much like NIDS had done before, National Institute for Discovery Science, which, while many people suspected it was a government program, was not. It was completely funded by Bob Bigelow. He bought the property. He hired the people to be there. He conducted studies for more than a decade. He owned the ranch for 20 years and sold it in 2016. NIDS was private. BASS was public in that it was funded by taxpayer money. And that came from a program whose name has not yet been made public.
What is going on at Skinwalker Ranch?
If you're asking, did we crack the mystery, the answer is no. You know, it was very frustrating for the scientists, both the NIDS guys and the BASS guys, and I think any other agency that's been involved in the study. We don't have an answer to how it works. We know that it is real, and it's mysterious, and it's documentable, and it's physical. And sometimes it's not physical. Sometimes it appears almost like a hologram, and it's a trickster, and it's elusive. It is clearly intelligent, but we don't know what it is, or where it's from, or what its intentions are. Does it mean to harm us? Sometimes it does harm us. Part of what the BASS study did, they evaluated databases from around the world, including some very dramatic cases from other countries where humans faced significant harm, physical harm. And there have been some reports of that in the Uinta Basin as well, where people were harmed after encountering these things. Could some of them be government? I think the answer is yes. Are all of them government? I'd say the answer is no. You know, I try to prepare myself for these trips that we make, and I'm respectful of whatever it is that's there, and I don't want to take anything home to any loved ones, but most of the people who've gone there as many times as we have taken something with them, and I don't want that to happen.
We still don't know what we're dealing with. And that's the truth of it. Big questions, disturbing answers. It sounds crazy, but in reality, these events happen. It's hard, it's your problem. You have to grapple with that. These events happen. And so that's everybody's challenge, is to try to absorb and integrate that information, or deny it, or ridicule it. That's what people like to do. But these events happened. There is a real mystery here, and I believe mysteries have solutions. I believe we can get at least closer to the truth. I don't know, man. Are we alone in the universe? This intelligence that seems to be interacting with humanity, what is it? What is its purpose? These are real, tangible, physical events, but sometimes it's like a mirage. Nobody knows what we're dealing with. That's the bottom line. Nobody knows. It's our job to investigate the unexplained, not to explain the uninvestigated.
That's what I figured, but... Yeah. Okay, okay.
Oh, God, yeah.
There's those red lights. You see red lights around. Could a truck do that? I don't think it could.
That is not a truck. That ain't no more goddamn truck.
There's no road up there. You see any trucks with 4 red lights? See,
That's at one time, I can draw 20 different pictures what I see right here.
They must got a little ship on there. They go.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, that's what it looks like.
I have no idea.
Now it's gone, ain't it? So that orange light is Terry's yard light.
It's right behind.
You can't throw the baby out with the freaking bath. You've got cases that have sort of like striking, compelling evidence of the UFO connection.